Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining Gene's QE Babble. Today, we're going to talk about partnerships. The title of the event, One Team, One Goal. So the trend in the industry is very clear. From permanent teams to partner-led models, the pressure is on to always deliver at scale, but with less reliance increasingly on a strictly in-house FTE headcount. And you look anywhere and you can see it happening. So companies appear to favour the flexibility of scaling through partners both on and offshore. So today's QE Babble is going to talk about that. It's going to talk about how to build a culture across a team of FTEs, contractors and partners in different locations, potentially employed by different companies. How to then go about delivering as a one cohesive unit. And then importantly, a question that comes up a lot in the work that I do in recruitment is what the future looks like for quality engineering, with potentially a lack of internal development opportunities for junior quality engineers, with partners bringing in juniors themselves and less FTEs coming into industry. So we'll discuss all of that and loads more. So if you are watching along, please make sure to use the comment section. Here you can add in your perspective on this topic, and you can also ask questions that we're going to pose to the panel towards the end of the session. So let's try and make it nice and interactive. I'd love to get your views, as I'm sure the panel would as well. So without further ado, let's bring the panel in. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Matt.
Hi, Marion, Anna,
Hi,
Simon.
everyone.
Thanks a lot for participating today. We've been talking about this topic for a couple of months now, and specifically wanted the three of you on because of your expertise and experience of dealing with a partner-led model. And we hope you can bring different perspectives to this. Anna, I know that you currently work for a consulting firm, so I think you come at it from a slightly different angle. I'm going to be really interested to get your views on some of these topics. So without further ado, let's crack on. Marion, if I can come to you first, if you wouldn't mind just kind of introducing yourself a little bit, and then tackling that first question around how to go about building culture when we're not just talking about one team of permanent employees.
Okay. Thank you very much, Matt. Hopefully everyone can see and hear me okay. So just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Marianne Lockley, and I've been doing quality assurance now for more than 25 years. It's the only career I've had since I left university, and thoroughly enjoyed it, still enjoying it. Started a stint, hopefully my last one, with the Royal Mail Group, heading up the quality engineering team here at Royal Mail Group. Interesting topic of conversation today, so thank you for the invite, and of course being with my other esteemed colleagues here as well. It's a big one. It's a big one because, as you said, it's one of the things that we're finding where it doesn't matter where you work. It doesn't matter whether it's a big organization or a small organization. More and more we're finding we're having to, and I think especially since COVID as well, more and more we're finding we're having to work with multiple teams, different geographical locations across the globe, different time zones, a mix between FTE and between consultants staff as well. You get different ratios. Some people say, oh, the best way is 80-20, favoring consultants, so you can ramp up or ramp down, or, oh, it's a 50-50 split. But it's just working out which one's right for your organization and your team and what you're trying to achieve. So across that disparate workforce, building that culture. So some of the things I really like to implement or try to drive is that sense of a one team. And it's that sense of a unified vision and value. So what's the shared purpose? What's our mission? What's our quality vision? What does quality mean for everyone within that team? Are we all working towards the same goal? Do we have a joint up onboarding, irrespective of whether they're FTEs or whether they're consultant staff? How do we reinforce performance for the team, or do we do joint team meetings? I've noticed some organizations want to segregate, all the consultants, so don't invite them to the Christmas parties, or don't invite them to the socials, or have a separate email address for them because everything else is confidential. So we need to create this environment of inclusive rituals, joint knowledge sharing, retrospectives, lessons learned, whether it's an agile way, we're doing all the joint stand-ups together, building that sense of rapport, that sense of unity across the time zones or the contracts or the people or the geographical locations where they're based. Also, is that thing of celebrating wins publicly and as one team. So it doesn't matter, we're all delivering towards the same goal for that organization where we work. So it doesn't matter whether it's a consultant who's come up with a brilliant idea, or who's come up with the best defect, for example, or is found the most P1s or anything like that. We celebrate it jointly as a team, fostering that culture of respect and value across everyone. Also, things like communicating transparently and frequently. I was talking about some of the things, you might say you have a separate email address for the consultants and keep them separate, and so you don't want to share information. Then how do we expect everyone to have one shared vision and one shared goal and work towards that if we're already creating that segregation, even by subconscious bias, I would say, within the team already? So it's having that transparent frequency. Obviously, there'll be levels to where your level of sharing will be based on confidentiality and what it's about, but is that sense of inclusivity of everyone within the team being treated as one member of the team.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of the challenges there, which I think I know a lot of the people I talk to experience as well. So we'll try and dive into some of those. Thanks, Marianne. Anna, welcome to you. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks for having me. I'll introduce myself a little bit. So I'm currently the head of quality engineering at 2i. My current role is all about making sure we've got the right capabilities and people to meet the needs of our clients and help them achieve their goals. As Matt said, I'm the consultant on the panel today. Most of my career has been in consultancy. I've been in testing and quality engineering for more than 20 years, which makes me feel old every time I say it. Quite a varied career, most of it spent in consultancy, financial services, public sector, lots of different industries. And I think this is such a relevant topic because it's something that we see all the time. And I think, it is really coming into sharp focus now. Being the consultant, walking into different client organisations, it's really important we create that cohesive team quickly because we're there to deliver outcomes for our clients. So understanding, I've taken some notes while Marianne was talking there, understand that shared mission, what does quality mean for the client, getting everybody on the same page is so important. And you're right, sometimes we can set up barriers that can make that a wee bit more difficult. My experience, the best outcomes that we achieve is where we are breaking down those barriers and we are getting everybody on the same page. We're celebrating those successes. There are a couple of keywords that you mentioned there, Marianne, around unification and unity, which I think is so important, having that one team vision. Software delivery is not about doing things in isolation. It's a very people-centered process, and it typically involves lots of different organizations, and the engagements that we work in. You get your client organization, you'll typically be working with other delivery partners, whether that's in the testing space or through the development lifecycle. You need to be able to engage and have that one team culture across the pipeline. And it is about, getting everybody together, having that shared understanding, being able to talk openly and freely, not treating people differently. Just because of the badge that they wear. Sometimes, I've been in various different client sites, and sometimes it's for a very good reason, but you can have where you've got different badges and different lanyards because, you're an external. And that, again, just creates a bit of separation that's really visible. So while it's important, sometimes, if you're going into government locations, for example, then you need to know what clearances people have got and various different things like that. So it serves a purpose, but sometimes it can be a bit of a barrier as well. And it's the perceptions of some of the individuals in the team as well can be one of the barriers that we need to overcome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to ask you a few more questions on that actually, but let's go to Simon. I'm conscious we're having some slight issues potentially with bandwidth, as this is quite a chunky video, but hopefully we'll be able to hear from Simon. Do you want to just jump in, Simon?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. So I'm Simon. I've been in the QE world, testing world, for about 15 years now. Last 5 years or so, until end of March this year, I was at EasyJet. I was head of quality engineering for the last 3 of those. And I think what strikes me, and this topic is especially, I've certainly experienced in the larger organizations, there is definitely a drive towards needing to use partners for testing because they don't want to increase headcount. There's definitely a headcount element there of not wanting to increase the number of permanent heads. And I wonder whether part of it is because as an industry, QE is still seen as the poorer sibling, and therefore it's deemed that partner resource is more of a commodity that we can flex more on testing than we can on, say, development or project management or other features. And I think one thing I tried to do with EasyJet, my team, I had about 120 people, but only 19, 20 of those were permanent staff. The rest of the team were all partner quality engineers, quality engineering managers, leaders, architects. And what I did was, as Marianne said earlier on, is bring everybody into the room, have the strategy, have the values, collaborate collectively as one. And when I joined, there was very much a divide of the partners had their own test strategy and the permanent staff had their own test strategy, and there was no real cohesion. So it was like, scrap those, let's build one together. Let's have those whole day workshops where everyone who's able to be in the room can be in the room, but virtually we have the offshore team as part of it as well. But actually what we did over time as well was we realized that the partners we had in place were more testing, old school, traditional manual testing at the end of project partners rather than quality engineering partners. And we actually made a transition to a more modern partner that had a nearshore presence as well as an offshore presence and an onshore presence that were embedded in the quality engineering strategy. The RFP was all about, this is our strategy, we need you to be on board with it. We worked together on growing that strategy out and brought a partner on that were 100% bought into the direction we were going. And that really helped us grow the quality engineering vision and strategy going forward. But it was about embedding that culture early, making sure they're on the same page from day one, including them in all the strategy workshops or creating our values or delivering pieces of work, and that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet from day one.
Okay, thank you. One of the things I was going to ask on this is around sort of personal development plans. So if we take two people who maybe work on the project, one's an FTE who's employed by the same company as you, Simon, and then one is through a partner resource who's on the project delivering towards the same goal, but they've got potential. I'm sure they will have different personal objectives to get to the next stage of their career. Have you had any kind of experience of that? And if so, do you think that creates any kind of issues with the ability to deliver?
I think it can do. I think it can create some resentment. Certainly had situations where obviously as part of the QE function, building out development plans for the internal staff. But I think the different step is you end up talking to the account manager or your direct companion who works for the partner to say, this person's on this project, we need them to learn these skills, we need them to grow in this way, but there's an extra step in the process. One of the things I did with my team was I got them all the Ministry of Testing Pro license so they could go and do their own learning and development. I then suggested to the partner, this person needs to be able to attend these courses. Is there any way you can fund them to get the same pro license so we can do the courses collectively as a team? And that was all agreed, and we all did the courses together. But there's an extra step in there of having to talk to their line manager or personnel manager that can help grow the teams. But when they're in that team environment and when we're all working as one team, include them in the trainings, include them in the stuff that's on site. If they can be in the room and work together, then fire away and do it. It's treating them as one team means having them there when they can be there to be part of things.
Okay, so we're kind of blending into the same question, which we'll get into then. So what I'd love to kind of understand is kind of practical things that happen around how you can bring these people together to deliver towards a unified goal. So potentially talking about meetings, getting them in the same location. Anna, can you shed any light on that at all? Like what I'm trying to phrase it in the right way, but how are 2i kind of held accountable to make sure that the people that you put on site understand what the customer's goal is and are kind of aligned on that?
That's a really important point, Matt. And Simon talked about some of the tangible things that we do, once we're engaged. But that initial mobilisation of a teamer where you're bringing new team members on, making sure that they understand the client context, what it is they're trying to achieve, what does the big picture look like? Typically clients don't come to a partner to just get somebody that can complete tasks. They want somebody that can help deliver. They want a capability to deliver outcomes. It might be something that they don't have in-house that they're looking to enhance, or we might be helping them on a growth journey. So understanding what that goal of the client is super important to make sure that actually we're not just delivering the day job, but we're helping them achieve their goals. So having that context right at the outset is fundamental, and then making sure that we're constantly checking in. We're having those conversations with our clients to understand, okay, so where are you, what's coming next, what are your pain points, what are you thinking about, what are the challenges you're experiencing, how can we help? And a lot of that's working with sometimes their team as well. I think about one of our particular engagements at the moment. One of the fundamental aspects of that contract is that we're going to hand the service back to that organisation. They've brought us in to help deliver a programme and to mobilise something new from the ground up. But at the end of that, they're building out their own organisation and capability, and they want to be able to take that on. So understanding that goal really affects how we put that team together and what are the outcomes that we need to deliver. Knowledge repositories and all that sort of thing become really important to make sure that we're sharing knowledge freely, we're upskilling everybody, we're bringing others in. So we're probably in the different position where we're running that service at the moment as almost a kind of proxy for the client, predominantly with all of our people. But we'll be bringing client people into that team and upskilling people that be new to testing careers as well, and thinking about how do we help them acquire testing skills and make sure that they're getting the right things. It's interesting, Simon, that you touched on, working with the partners that you've worked with to align training plans and make sure that they've got access to the same things, and that's really important. It's quite unusual for clients sometimes to be as open about that. A lot of the time people will be buying in partners because they're buying in capabilities that they don't have. That it's not, this individual needs to maybe upskill in this area. It's get me a new individual that has those skills. So that partnership working is quite variable, I think, and that's a key thing for making sure that you are delivering as one team.
Thank you, Marianne. You are muted at the moment, just FYI. Brilliant. So that was really interesting for Anna, just talking about the kind of responsibility of the partner and how they bring their people into projects. But it'd be good to understand from your perspective, scenario being that you're potentially gradually rolling in additional people through partners or even independent contractors. How are these people onboarded towards a common goal from the leadership side?
Yeah, so there's some really important points that Anna and Simon have raised, and one of the ones that really stuck with me, it's about that partnership. I think a lot of people bring in we just want this capability and that's it. Whereas when you're defining it as a partnership with yourself and the company you're bringing in, then you start to work towards that. It's not my code, it's not my test, it's
our product collectively. Everyone now is working towards that buy-in of, yes, we're delivering it for this organization as our product. So is that partnership? Do we want a long-term strategic partnership, or are we talking long-term? And that way we can then start to look at investing in shared tooling and visibility of, and then also standardizing our QA practices, making sure everyone's aligned on what quality means, everyone's aligned on our common goals, and also our common ways of working and our common ways of sharing not just issues, but also the successes and the wins as well. And of course, one of the things I would really say is, especially when we start to look at the geographical disparities or even the cultural disparities, the contract types of the people we're working with, from a career growth perspective, sometimes from my experience, I feel some consultants come in feeling, oh, well, I'm a consultant, there's no career growth per se for me, other than just being a consultant. And it's how do we get away from that mindset of, right, I have my permanent employees and I'm looking after their career growth, but also these consultants working for me or working with me, if we're learning new skills, AI or anything else, how do I also bring them on that journey so that it's that partnership we're building up together? Another thing I think is fostering that environment of psychological safety and trust. So between the consultants, between the delivery managers or the assurance managers, what we even have in our SLAs and contracts, and within our teams as well, to start to break down those walls of us and them. I'm paying you for a service, so you're delivering a service. So just, excuse my French, shut up and just do it. And then you find sometimes you're not actually getting the best from those consultants because they are just shutting up and just doing what you said. They're not being innovative. They're not coming up with suggestions or recommendations that would actually help you and your team progress and do better. So it's, yes, we shift from me versus them to us and our delivery. We have that shared vision, tooling, visibility, tools, what quality means, practices, ways of working, and also encompass all of that with fostering a sense of safety, trust, mutual respect, and value add for all sides involved.
Yeah, and mutual respect's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I can imagine that sometimes it's difficult to get that across a workforce which is spread across different locations, time zones, levels of experience, pay as well. But let's be honest. These people may well be receiving different pay, quite different pay for doing quite a similar job at times. Particularly if we're talking about independent contractors who are paid per day rather than salary. Someone's made a point here, which I'll just flash up and see whether anyone's prepared to have a go at this. So Goke, who I know, has said, how do you manage the resentment a permanent employee may feel when working alongside a day rate contractor who has been in position for years? I imagine, you've had scenarios where you've had contractors working with you, Simon, and they're doing the same job as someone else, but they're getting paid differently. Must be hard.
Yeah, it is, and there's usually a lot of resentment, especially for the more senior roles where we're paying contractors large day rates to come in and effectively do the same role as one in the team. So it is about understanding that value that they're adding and what difference they're bringing in. And I think part of that comes down to whether they're coming in as a supplier, as a bum on a seat, effectively, just to do the same role as everyone else, or if they are bringing something different. And I think that's where some companies might get it wrong, where they can't increase the headcount, so they just bring people in to fill the gaps that they really want perm people to do, rather than using a consultant to be a consultant and come in and do something that the team hasn't got the skills for. So I think it's where they're adding value, it's something different that the team don't have. That's easier to articulate. But when it's someone that's come in just to fill a role that really you want someone as a perm, that is a challenge. And that's where you have to get them on side and get them to prove their value and support the team and be collaborative as much as possible to add that value. but that can be a hard one.
Yeah, I'm sure. Marion, you mentioned about having partner resource within the team and making sure they feel like they're learning and growing their career, so that there's a responsibility potentially from the customer side to make sure that's happening. But I'm sure there's also that responsibility from their employer's side, which would be more Anna and potentially 2i's area. How, Anna, so if someone's deployed for, on a long-term engagement, let's say 12 months or more, their days are largely made up delivering for the customer. How are they ensuring that they're still progressing internally as a 2i employee?
So there's a few different ways that we approach that. I've been in consultancy for a really long time, and one of the things that's really easy is to forget your home organisation and who you work for. So we've certainly done a lot of work to put in place a structure and make sure that we've got engagement with all of our teams, so they've got a strong connection back to home base. They benefit from having lots of colleagues with lots of different experience that they can call upon. So, we've got quite active group chats on Teams and things. Have you seen this? Have you come across this problem? How have you resolved this before? So they get the same collaboration as you would get working in an end client organisation with your colleagues, but they get across a bigger hive, and they see different experiences, and they can look at different things, ultimately making sure that somebody feels they're getting the most out of the role that they're in, and that the client feels they're getting the most out of the service, the partnership that they've bought into, is looking for the win-wins and the synergies. What's in it for the client working with us? What's in it for us working with the client, to make sure that we're both getting something out of it? We've got a shared ambition, we're going to achieve outcomes and benefit for each other. And doing that at an individual level as well. What's that individual looking for? What are their aspirations? Where's the growth opportunity for them? What value can they bring to the client? And ultimately, as a consultancy, it's about making sure that that continues to deliver value for the client. So the benefit of that is actually it's not always going to be the same individual. If as your needs change and that individual's trajectory changes, they'll move on to something else, and you'll have the benefit of having fresh talent and experience come into your business. That all takes a bit of work to make sure it works smoothly and happens effectively, but it's finding the win-wins and the synergies at all levels for me is the thing that really makes it work, and making sure that we've still got that connection back to home base so that you feel part of something bigger.
Yeah, and I do see this a lot, because I speak to people who work for lots of different consultancies, and when you're talking about making sure they feel like they know where home is, to be honest, I'm unsure whether all of them do that I speak to, and I can see why that could happen. It could easily happen, couldn't it? If you're deployed for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, which can happen, then it's probably quite easy to the easier thing to happen, or the more likely potentially, is for them to forget where home is. But that's why it's clearly that 2i put a lot of steps in place to make sure they do know, and actually that adds value to the client, because then they get the support of people who've got who are working on, I imagine, different projects in different industries that they can bring into whatever customer they're working with there. So I guess that's a benefit, isn't it, of the partner approach? Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. I think that's really interesting. And what about like practical points around like sort of meetings and access to data? Is that in some cases prohibited because they're not a full-time employee? Simon, is?
Yeah, it can be, because there will be sensitive stuff that we can't share with them, and that's something you have to stick to, and that's where there is this need to differentiate between your FTEs and your contractors and whatever else, and that can be a challenge, particularly if there's something big, whole organization wide going on, that people start to get sniffs of. There's something going on. Why are you not telling us? And you have to toe the party line and say, well, can't talk about it, etc., and that can be a challenge. Certainly experienced that a few times over the last few years, where there's been organizational things going on, but we've sort of had to say nothing to the partners. and eventually they get a message from our supplier management teams to say this is what's going on, etc., etc. So it is about using your discretion about what you can say and what you can't, and making sure your teams are on the same page as well, and that the people in the teams are not letting stuff out that they shouldn't be. And that can be a real challenge, but it's also about having enough of a level of understanding with the partners that they understand that. And most partners that I've worked with, they know there's that barrier. There's some things they can't be part of. There will be company all hands that they're not invited to because they're not technically company people. But in every other aspect, it's making sure they are part of it. And one of the things that we used to talk about quite a lot at EasyJet was they all bled orange, the same as the permanent staff did effectively. But they came with that ability that if we needed something that we didn't have, they had their big consultancy to be able to go and find the right person or find the right technique to be able to help us out. But when it comes to the sensitive stuff, yeah, there is always that barrier that you have to stay firm and not share that.
Okay, thank you, Marion. Your take on that, like from a practical sense, in terms of like meetings and stuff. Do you think it affects the ability to deliver if people can't always see all the same data and information?
I would say yes and no.
You might have a window open with the event on potentially, or another device. Just unmute if you can.
Issues with my connectivity today.
It's all right. We can hear you well
before
now.
I got started, so I'm not sure what's happening. Hopefully, you can still see me okay.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, all good. Go for it.
Yeah. No. I've completely lost you. If you can hear me.
Okay.
I can see everyone on the screen, but I can't hear anyone anymore.
Okay. Try and rejoin, and we'll come back to you in a second if that's okay. So Simon, we were just talking there about whether people have an issue with delivering because they can't see all the data all the time. You were talking about sort of, internal. It sounds like it's sort of, potentially internal politics situations, which of course happen, especially when you're permanently employed. But from a practical sense, in terms of like project delivery, does everyone see everything all of the time?
I think there is usually a need that if it's a sensitive project, but we need those people on the project, and NDAs obviously need to be signed. And there's usually an extra level of scrutiny. Certainly in my experience, teams like the InfoSec will need to be aware of what data is being shared outside of the organization, as far as how the partner are going to use the data, where they're storing the data, et cetera. Do they have access to the right networks, or are they using their own machines? All that kind of discussions will need to happen before a project is almost kicked off or gets into the meat of the project. But there are ways around that to make sure that if they need to be on the project and they need to know the data, absolutely, we make sure they have the access they need to have. Usually with someone who's a perm member of staff overseeing the activity, so that somebody is aware of what's going on and able to work with the team, which can be a stretch. I've certainly found this in the QE team at EasyJet, where we only had such a small amount of QE perms that if we needed a QE lead or a QE manager to oversee the partner team, it wasn't always possible. Some projects we'd have a partner QE manager or QE lead because there wasn't people around to oversee it. So then there's that extra level of, well, that then comes up to me or come up to the next level up that would oversee a bigger picture. And then there's more legwork to manage. And that was one of the challenges I think we found, was when you've got such a big partner team, you need more of those perms to oversee everything that's going on. And that was a challenge for us. But yeah, on the data side of things, it was definitely if they need to see it, we make it happen that they can see the data.
Okay. What about like accountability of partners? How's that like recorded and monitored? Anna, if I can just ask you a little bit about that.
Sure. So It's like anything else, you know, the customer that you're working with wants to know if you're doing the job and if you're delivering what's needed. So we put in place those governance mechanisms, reporting, dashboards, metrics, all those sorts of things that look at the health of the service. You know, do we have, you know, how's attrition looking? Are we delivering to SLAs? How much rework are we having on deliverables? All those sorts of things, as well as the delivery specific things that tell us whether the testing or the quality engineering work that we're doing is effective, efficient, if it's delivering value. So it's probably a lot of the same things that, you know, Simon would be looking at for across his portfolio, how things are working, with an extra layer on, you know, how are we helping as a partner deliver the outcomes that the client's looking for. And it's about having that engagement. So, you know, Simon was talking about, you know, not necessarily being able to share sensitive information if there's organisational changes going on, for example, which happens really often. It's about having those honest partner conversations and absolutely appreciating what the context of the client is. We then make sure that our teams are aware of things like that as well. So, you know, there is change going on. You know, it's a you know, a transitional time for people. You know, there will be feelings around about that, so they've got a bit of context. Even if we don't have all the information, you do need to be aware there's humans involved in everything that we're doing, and that helps a lot with the partnership side of things as well. You know, if everybody's thinking about those that are working with and making sure that we're all doing the right things, it's building that trust and confidence in each other.
Yeah, and what? Thanks for that, Simon. In terms of dealing with partners, I know a lot of the time when I'm talking to people who work for partners, they refer to how billable they are as a measure of how much value they're offering to their consultancy. Because obviously that is a goal to make sure you're as billable as possible. From the customer point of view, I guess it depends. You've got to pick the right partner, right? But like, is there ever any issues with that around, you know, consultancies wanting to make sure they're as billable as possible, but actually that misses the point of delivering?
Yeah, and I think depending on the relationship you have with the partner, some partners will try and work on a T&M basis. So it's just a time and materials day rate for so many days, for a month, whatever, over the period of the project. What we tried to move more to was an outcome-based service, where it's not about the billability on a day-by-day basis. It's about delivering the work within a period of time, and the consultancy or the partner can then scale up and scale down to make sure it's delivered and the outcome is achieved, rather than it being about having 6 people for 6 months, etc., etc. And that, for me, took a bit of the me needing to know about the billable rate of the people out of the equation, because they were just managing it all internally. But yeah, when you start first having those conversations, people are saying, "Oh, I need to be 100% billable. I need to be on this project every day for the next 6 months because that's what my consultancy needs me to do." Whereas we tried to move away from that, so that we didn't need to be in that detail, and that was down for the partner to work out within themselves. But it does depend on the partner. Some are much better at offering that outcome-based service from the get-go, and that we will just deliver this as a service to you and you will work with us. That can be a challenge when you've got sprint teams and whatever else, and there's a certain makeup that needs to be part of that sprint team delivering week by week releases.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just about having those open conversations.
Okay.
I think there's the reverse of that as well. Sorry to jump in there, Matt, is the expectations of the customer as well. So I'm paying for an expensive resource. It's costing me lots of money. I want to control it and I want to know what's going on all of the time. And that can create some conflict and tension as well if you're not aware of how the customer operates and where their thinking is, and setting out those expectations clearly as well for, you know, this is an outcome-based service. These are the things that we'll do. These are your accountabilities. These are our accountabilities. And making sure that everybody's clear on that. But it can create a bit of friction in the teams, particularly if, you know, as a consultant, my job isn't just to deliver for one client. I'm doing lots of different things. So, you know, might not be available at a point in time. And that can be a bit of an adjustment for some clients who are used to having people there at their disposal, essentially, whenever they need them. So you do really have to work on that from both the you know, this is what we're trying to achieve as a consultant, and this is what we need from you as a client, and what the client's wanting to get out of it as well, to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And I'm sure, Simon, you've probably had some experience of that kind of bleeding into the wider team as well. You know, why is John Bob not available? And working through those types of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move on to the last question, the last point, which is a really interesting one. So it was about what does the future of fundamental one really? What does the future of QE look like if there's less room to develop internal talent? So certainly what I've seen as a trend in the last 2 or 3 years is less organisations hiring junior engineers. It's undoubtedly a tough market for graduates, and potentially one of the reasons for that is the heavier reliance on partners means that there's just less space for what we keep saying, headcount. So Marion, I'll come to you on this one. Do you think that's an issue for the industry, and if so, like what can be done about it, do you think? Oh, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. You wouldn't believe I work in IT.
It happens to the best.
Potentially, yes, but I would think it all comes down to how it's being managed. And by that, I mean both by the person responsible from the QA side internally, and also from your partners as well. So there obviously there's some risks, but we should always remember that partnering is for augmentation, not for replacement, if that makes sense. So we're bringing them to help us to deliver, to meet an end goal. And so we're not bringing them to replace. And we also need to still factor in that there will always be, as we get older, as technology changes, as even the landscape of what we do within the QA industry changes, we will need to bring in fresh blood, younger people, university graduates, freshers, as we would say, people who have a different way of thinking, and it all adds to that, to the rainbow that we as QA specialists need to do our job properly, so we can deliver extreme and unimaginable standards of quality. But we shouldn't be doing it at the risk of sidelining or underutilizing our FTEs. We shouldn't be doing it at the risk where our domain knowledge becomes the IP or sits only with our consultants. We shouldn't be doing it at the risk of our own FTEs or their talents becoming stagnated. And even when they want to then progress or move on to other jobs, then they find it difficult because they find that the landscape and the industry has changed, progressed so much because, they've dedicated their life to my company and we only work with, I don't know, SQL or something, or old-fashioned test director, whereas everyone else is using something more upskill and upmarket out there. So we have to manage it properly and be thinking about things of how do we do knowledge sharing? What's the processes we have in place? So information is not just isolated and we have single points of failures for our team members as well. What are the career paths we're defining for them? What are the competency framework we're putting in place for them? That strategic partnership has to be a strategic mutually benefiting partnership between myself, my organization, my FTEs who are being loyal and faithful to me and to the organization we work for. And then, eventually it's also the thing of what's the return on investment? Because sometimes there can be false economies. You're thinking it's cheaper to get in someone who's less experienced, or, I can use and ramp up and ramp down, and, I can exit them out of the company a lot easier than if I had a permanent member of staff. But you then have to say, right, what's the return on investment? You might be building a system that, and we've all experienced this, you think it's going to be a project that lasts 6 months and it ends up lasting 2 years or 3 years. And then when it's time to ramp down, you're losing all that SME knowledge that your consultants have because you were solely focused on them. So it's the approach we take to managing it. I think, yes, if we focus on just, only getting consultants in and getting the junior ones in, then we're going to lose all the benefits we could have from investing in our course.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned one of the clear benefits there that everyone always refers to. I certainly refer to if I'm talking about contractors, and I guess it works the same for consultancies. Ramp up and ramp down. Big benefit that you don't have the headcount and the challenges around increasing and decreasing headcount quickly if you're using consultants. But then if you do rely on that, which is what the question's all about, if you rely on that too much, then it may well mean that you change strategy and don't bring in juniors, you don't hire graduates. And long term, Marianne, do you think that's an issue for companies? Is that something you've seen in your recent work?
So it is something I've seen, but I think I'm very old school in. I still believe in whether I'm bringing in consultants or not. I'm investing in people. I'm investing in their future career as well. So even if they're only with me for 3 months or 6 months or a year, or how it turns out to be, but that journey, especially as a QA person, I want that journey to be something that actually adds benefit to their career growth, irrespective of whether I only had them for 3 months or 6 months, or they were a contractor or consultant within my team. Otherwise, then it almost defeats the purpose of nurturing and growth in your career. What value are you adding to me if you're just coming in just to, you're not learning or progressing. You're just coming in to do, literally. I think maybe I might have unpopular views on that one.
No, it doesn't sound like it. Well, I think what you're saying is that irrespective of whether they're an FTE with your organisation or whether they're through a partner, you still feel responsibility towards their career development, which is it's great to hear, because that means that they're getting it from two different angles. They're getting it from their employer, the partner, and they're also getting it from the customer, which is good. And potentially they don't get that everywhere. So if they get that working with you, then that's thumbs up as far as I can see. Simon, what your views on that? Is that something you've experienced?
I agree with what Marianne's saying. I do think there's a matter of investing in the people, regardless of whether they're contractors, consultants, or perm staff. I do think it's becoming more of a challenge to justify the graduate resources or the junior resources internally. I know Stu Day's done a great job at Capital One, and he'd done previously a good job at Dunelm of getting that academy set up and bringing new people and fresh people in the industry. And I think it's great that consultancies like 2i, Enfocus, Rock are all building their own academies to help the industry. But I sometimes think it's the decision makers at the top that decide that, and I particularly found this in organisations where IT is not the main product. IT is a bolt-on to help deliver the product. That there isn't that focus on, we need to develop the technical staff, we need to have development engineers, we need to have fresh blood coming in from the bottom, we need to get testers on from the start and build them up. It's just go and pay for a partner to give us the resources for 6 months and then they can go away again. And there's not that focus on developing and building a culture and building a product team that can continuously deliver. And I think that's where the shift has to be. While we're still working in project focused waterfall models or longer term, and then there are a lot of companies still working in that way, the focus will still be on the scaling up and scaling down. Whereas if we're in a more product culture where it's continuous delivery, we can build teams that can deliver and bring those graduates in to bring the fresh ideas and the fresh blood. So there's a few factors there on the culture, the type of delivery, the way the organization is set up, that whether it's even an option to try and push. But it has been particularly difficult in some companies to try and even say, can we bring some graduates in? Oh no, we just use partners for the lower level people.
Sorry to jump in there, Matt. And what I found in some cases as well is that's a very short-sighted way of looking at it. So I worked for an organization, and I won't name names, where they had that similar model of just bringing in people who had that niche skill set they needed. And by the time it became BAU, those people had actually, most of them had actually then moved on from the consultancy companies. And then they were being charged extortionate prices to bring those people from outside back in as contractors to come help them solve the problems. And of course, with the members of the FTE teams they had, not many of them had the skill sets to actually then be able to add any value to either help with incidents when they came up, or even with code for upgrades when they needed to. So it turned out to be not a very wise decision in the end.
Okay. Anna, what's your take on this?
I mean, I guess I can resonate with the challenges that Marianne and Simon have mentioned. And I think it is, as Simon called out, a lot about what the goal and the purpose of the organisation is. It's not always delivering widgets. EasyJet's about flying people around the world, and various other things as they expand their remit. But IT is there to serve the business a lot of the time, and sometimes that means that there's not the willingness to invest in building up capabilities, whether it be quality engineering and testing, or whether it be development, which is also quite often outsourced to partners. And that can make it quite challenging, but you kind of need to understand the context that you're working in. And I suppose there's a benefit in working with partners, and the fact that, so we acquired Infocus at the beginning of the year, and we've just recently consolidated and refreshed our junior programme, which will be going out for recruitment very shortly, as a wee plug. But that brings fresh talent into the industry, and the benefit of a consultancy from that point of view, I think, is we can kind of hothouse their experience almost, because we can offer them lots of different things, and we can, give them opportunities on different clients. We can give them a lot broader experience faster than you can in in an end client organisation, which is very beneficial for the careers of the individuals. One of the comments on the chat there is around personal development being the individual's responsibility, which is absolutely true. But we all have a responsibility to create those opportunities for growth, as well as the person setting their they're in charge of their destiny, and we've got to help them get there. And having that ability to bring fresh talent into the industry, and I've seen the phenomenal growth of some people within our organisation, certainly very rapidly, because they've had the benefit of that experience, and they can then take that out. They don't always stay in consultancies. People move on to different things, and that talent, I think, does then naturally kind of percolate through the industry. I think it's probably more of a challenge, or what I see as more of a challenge, is people that have been in an end client organisation for a period of time, and the ability for them to keep their skills fresh and continuously learn and build on what they're doing can be constrained a lot by the opportunity that they've got in front of them. And their willingness to engage in that as well.
Yeah, which is a good counter argument to it, really. And like you said, the benefit of working with a specialist consultancy is that they've got a whole kind of support network and ecosystem to bring their career on. Whereas if we're looking at direct companies, then the pressure to deliver is so intense that when you go and ask to see whether we can hire grads, the answer is no, because it's all about delivery. Whereas if you bring someone in through a partner, and they can still be junior, but they've got that support network sitting behind them at their home office that can help their career on as well. So it's a good point that both Marianne and Simon made, that it shouldn't really matter actually where these people are employed, where their contracts is. It's, you still have a responsibility as a leader to help bring their career on and nurture talent in the industry, which is what we all ultimately want to happen. So a couple of good things being said in the chat here, and examples from some quite high profile companies. So this person, who I believe is called Richard, says Sky had a great program. The graduates get trained, then join different teams and different roles on rotation. And at the end of it, they're picked to join a team, or a team picks them. And a lot of the candidates through that program are great. And that sounds incredible. Obviously, not all organisations will have the opportunity and ability to do that, but that sounds like a great kind of training ground for people at an early stage of their career. And then Kirsten. So it's nice to see Kirsten watching. So the Pure Gym embrace grads, trial them for 1 year with hope they will stay and become perm. They bring new ideas for our teams and challenge the status quo, which is, I suppose, always the benefit of bringing new people into the team, isn't it? That if they've got the right personality and mindset, they can actually offer a lot to the team, irrespective of how many years experience they've got. That's what new blood brings. So some great points being made here. One actually, just a kind of question that someone's asked, which would be great if we could try and tackle, is from Nicola. I started this one. I'm curious to explore what approaches have been used to help teams define and shape what quality means for them beyond the phrase "we are all responsible for quality." So, like in terms of practical things that people have done. Perhaps Marion, if I could just ask you briefly to answer this. Have you got any experience of this?
Okay, really good question. So for me, quality means different things for different people. It depends on what you want, what the requirement is. So, for example, it might be for me, it's quality is, yes, I want everyone to be ISQTB certified. And then I know that everyone has that foundation of understanding. And if I'm looking to recruit people, for example, that's what I'm looking for. That's my measure of quality. Whereas for some other people, their measure of quality might be, yes, they've got 5 years experience in a fintech industry. That's what I'm looking to recruit. So that's my measure of quality. So I think what, Nicola, what you need is to get an understanding from, so whether this is the vision or the direction of your line manager or the company or the organization, to get an understanding of what quality looks like for them. What does good mean? What is the criteria that we say, yes, tick, 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 tick. Once these have been achieved, that's my level of quality satisfied. I wouldn't say there is a one size fits all, because again, it's a different thing depending on who you're talking to. If you're talking to a project manager, it might be, yeah, don't go over budget and I want it in 2 days. If you're talking to your quality manager, it's, well, you can take 3 days. I don't mind. I just don't want a P1 in production or something that will bring down the system. So I would say, get out there and talk to your product owners or your business people or your line manager, get an understanding of what quality means to them, and then build a framework that will address, if not everything, but then prioritizing based on your risk as well, your risk of likelihood and impact on business and what that would mean. You can then prioritize on what are the key criteria that you need to meet to ensure that your quality is being upheld. I hope I answered that in some way.
I think that was brilliant. Yeah, definitely. Start from the start. Define what quality means. That sounds good. Thank you. So someone's added in here. This is about how you build a culture of quality across a blended team. Very much a top-down thing, in my opinion. If there is a culture of togetherness and a sense of delivering a product together, much of these issues are sidelined. I've worked with some great blended teams. Probably, I'm sure it's easier said than done, but I think you've all individually made the point that it's built about building a culture of togetherness and making sure that everyone understands that they're all there to deliver a product irrespective of where they're employed and what their terms of engagement are. We are coming up to the end now, so we'll neatly finish just before 1 o'clock as well. Thank you everyone for watching. Thanks again to the panel for contributing. It's been really, really interesting. A great topic, but some really good points made passionately by all three of you. So I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone who's watched will as well. You can watch the video on YouTube afterwards. It'll be on there from tomorrow, and we're going to do another event towards the end of the month, which I'm going to release details of next week. So thanks again to the panel. And if you can sit down for a couple of minutes, I'll chat to you, and I'm going to end the stream there. So thanks for watching, everyone. See you soon.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.